Let's bring in Christian. Christian, how you doing?
I have never in my life been better. I've turned 49, but I don't feel a day older than 30.
Excellent. So, happy birthday. Congratulations.
My birthday, I'm 30 years old, so that's perfect. Never in my life have I had so much energy, so much creativity. And guys, thank you so much for your Ukraine coverage specifically. There is none better. And for geopolitical analysis, I hope to open up the eyes of many because I have seen none better. So both Alexander and Alex, thank you so much. Back to Ukraine. August 2014, that was a very, very dramatic month for me. I was in Belgrade, and my journalist friend called Sergei Belarus, he had taken my video camera, and he was doing war reporting in Donbass. But one day in August, I left everything I was doing because the Kiev authorities, they had kidnapped Sergei. So together with Graham Phillips, a British journalist, who you might know, I started a petition. I called the Ukrainian embassy in Oslo. I called the U.S. embassy in Kiev, the International Federation of Journalists, Committee to Protect Journalists, and maybe most important, I had some political contacts in Washington, D.C. to put pressure on Kiev to release Sergei. So he was released in the end, but the Kiev authorities, they actually stole my video camera. They left him in a ditch with only his underwear. So that was a very, very dramatic story. And in January 2015, I wrote a big article, Ukrainian Chronicles, on my site sorryserbia.com, which is kind of a reference article. And of course, it's coming all back. And to keep it short, back to my question, because my old friend who used to play guitar in the International Christian Fellowship in Belgrade, my church in Belgrade, that is David Gerenbeck. And he was the political counsel at the embassy in Belgrade. And now, last June, he got a new job. I guess it's a promotion, because now he is the political counsel at the U.S. embassy in Kiev. And I remember when I called the embassy, U.S. embassy there in 2014 about Sergei, they were a bit embarrassed that their quote-unquote democratic partners in Kiev kidnapped journalists. So this was before the U.S. election that David went to Kiev. Haven't been there since 2006. And then I said to David, I really, really hope that you are going to be a part of a cleanup operation, not a cover-up. We've seen now that Hunter Biden has come out with his book. I mean, unfortunately, we do not have outlets like Daily Mail in Norway. I mean, it was excellent what you said in the live stream now. But they said that now Hunter Biden has repented and everything. So one question is, how much will this new book from Hunter Biden have a play in what is happening? And I'm wondering if you have any specific knowledge of the political game from the U.S. embassy in Kiev. How much are they playing the dirty games with guys like Victoria Nuland and guys saying F the EU?
Well, Christian, lots of points. Firstly, your story about Sergei is absolutely fascinating, hugely interesting, and you seem to have done wonderful work on his behalf. And I think that is really remarkable, the tale you've told us. One thing I would say about Ukraine and the Ukrainian war is that it highlighted to a vivid degree, for me, the very selective view some people take about which journalists and which journalists' lives matter and which don't. I can remember way back, a bit before, there were some American journalists got killed in Syria, in Hama, when there was shelling took place there, especially a woman. I don't remember her name. And I remember the huge amount of publicity and anger there was about that in the media. Now, there were articles about that person, about people saying how wrong it was to attack and kill journalists in that fashion. How it was suggested that the Syrian government attacked this journalist on purpose. And then when Ukraine does similar things, or similar things happen in Ukraine against journalists who report from the other side, a wall of silence falls. And it also falls especially, by the way, if those journalists are either Russian or are connected to Russian media agencies. Lots of Russian journalists have been killed in Ukraine. There's been much publicity about the deaths of Russian journalists in Russia itself, but when they get killed on the front line in Ukraine, especially if they're targeted by the Ukrainian military, that doesn't seem to be very interesting or newsworthy so far as the Western media is concerned. I merely add that. I found your story about Sergei an absolutely fascinating one. Turning now to the topic of the US Embassy in Kiev, it is absolutely centrally involved in everything that happens in Ukraine. One of the advantages of Ukraine Gate and that bizarre impeachment of Donald Trump that took place in 2019 and 2020 is that we learned an awful lot about how central the US Embassy is in making decisions in Ukraine, that it's a key power center in Kiev, and that it talks to everyone and has a finger in every pie. And I have no doubt at all that they are directly and very heavily involved in all the decisions which are being made now. I would add that they've issued a whole series of extraordinarily inflammatory, I would say even provocative statements. They supported, for example, publicly the closure of Ukrainian radio stations that they objected to and television stations that they objected to, and to Ukraine's very bizarre decision to sanction one of its own citizens, Viktor Medvedchuk, because he heads a opposition party which is seen by some people as pro-Russian. So the US Embassy is intimately involved. Now, Hunter Biden and his book, I haven't read his book. I have no intention of reading his book. I read a review of it in Washington Examiner, which said that it skates over all the controversial issues. His, work in Ukraine, his work in China, his business deals there, his problems with, his gun license, his history with, all sorts of things. Doesn't really talk about that. It mentions his laptop in one place. I don't think this particular book is going to gain a great deal of traction, but the story that appeared in the Daily Mail, I think may. And I'm not entirely clear, I discussed this in a program recently, why Hunter Biden is publishing books and giving interviews at this time when he is supposed to be under investigation. And that is either remarkably reckless or remarkably sanguine, and suggests that he expects that those investigations are not going to be pursued very vigorously. But the publication of this material in the Daily Mail, which is shocking, does make me wonder whether perhaps things are in fact more difficult for him than he realizes. And I suspect the Daily Mail article is going to be more damaging to him than whatever benefit he gets from his book.
Thank you, Alexander. Maybe this is for Alex. What does a political council at the embassy in Kiev do? How much are they driving policies? How much are they taking initiative? How much is the policies controlled from Washington, D.C.?
I think they control everything. Short answer, at least in Ukraine, I think they control everything. I think they run the country. That's my opinion. I mean, Jeffrey Pyatt was a driving force in the coup in Ukraine. He's now, coincidentally, he's the ambassador in Greece as well. And I think he's been the driving force between many of the problems between Greece and Russia at the moment. So I think in Kiev's case, I think the U.S. Embassy and any position from the ambassador down to the council positions, I think they ran the show. And I think Biden would come in and he would, give the orders out and they would execute. That's just my take.
Yeah.
Sorry, Alexander, you go.
What I was simply going to say is I think if the US ambassador turned up at Zelensky's office and told Zelensky, pull the troops back from eastern Ukraine, Zelensky would have to do it. I think
it's an order from the president. I mean, it's coming, the ambassador is pretty much relaying it from DC. So yeah, I agree, Alexander. They would do whatever the embassy told them to do. And just going off that point, in reality, okay, every US embassy around the world is important. Yeah. But in reality, a country like Ukraine, an American embassy there wouldn't be as important as, say, an American embassy in London.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, that's, Ukraine, it's an American embassy and it's important, but it shouldn't have had the same amount of importance and weight that, say, a post as the American ambassador in London would have, or the American ambassador in Mexico. I mean, those would be posts where an American ambassador would be extremely important, an embassy would be extremely important. In Kiev, it would be an important embassy just because it's the American embassy, but it wouldn't be an embassy that would run the entire country the way it did, unless it was for other nefarious reasons, which we saw play out.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's like the U.S. Embassy in Saigon in, say, 1963 or something like that. I mean, it's that important today, certainly in the affairs of the country.
Thank you so much, guys. Alex Lamb is waiting for you in Belgrade. Let me know before so I can plan. And Alexander, of course, I'd love to introduce you to the cuisine of Serbian land on your tongue.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. Yes, Serbia is top of my list once everything opens up. Thank you very much.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care.